Okay, turn to Matthew chapter 23. This, we could call this one Woe Unto You. I don't think that this one's not going to be hard to try to put a label on it, or whatever you want to call it, a header. You know what's? I can't even think of what it's called. Anyway, you two ready? 2 or 3? Y'all ready? All right. In chapter 23, Jesus said, "Then spake Jesus to the multitude and to his disciples, saying, The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. All therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do. But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not." I've heard people try to come around and say that, okay, here we go, these Mosesites, or whatever you want to go back to the old law and hang up underneath it and be under the law rather than out from under the law, or even with the law, or in the law. See, if you're under the law, you're guilty. If you're not under the law, you're not guilty. Does that make sense? If you're in the Spirit and saved, and you're in Christ, then of the Spirit, you're not guilty in God's eyes. Because all He sees is God's cleansing or forgiveness in Jesus Christ's blood. In the physical sense, though, when we do sin, that means when we do the things that God tells us not to do, not just that there are parts of the Old Testament law that are carried forward. It's not brain science. Paul says in there for time and time again, the fornicators, the liars, cheaters, all those things, and they're covered under the law, already under the Old Testament. You just bring it forward, you make it a part of the New Testament as well. He just doesn't line it out, line upon line, precept upon precept, like he did in the Old Testament. But when you commit those things, then of the flesh ye shall reap of those things of which you've sown. See? That's the principle. So, but Jesus turns around right here and He says, therefore, whatsoever they bid you observe. Bid you observe, that observe and do. But He says that He tells them to do it, and then He says, He basically shorts that out or undoes what He just told them to do. Because He told them is predicated. What He told them to do is predicated upon this one thing. He says in the second half of this, "But do not ye after their works, for they say and do not." So there's no works for them to do because they're not doing it. They just tell everybody else to do it, but they don't do it. Which reminds us of what? Huh? Today's the same. It's not any different. We have fools out here in the churches that we've been a part of that stand up there in the pulpit and they tell you one thing, but then lo and behold, behind the pulpit and in the running of the every day of the church, they ain't got no guts. They can't call a spade a spade. They only call a spade within their little circles. But when it comes to dealing with the rest of the congregation and people out here that's in the assembly, that have agreed to assemble together as that local particular church, they can't deal with them. They allow sin and everything else to run, except when it's known to the rest of the congregation. Then they are forced to deal with it in front of everybody else. But when other things go on that we don't know anything about, or they allow things to happen, they'll get rid of somebody. They'll change out the people that are in the ministry. They'll run them off. Or, it's been done. It's happened. We have today, in this day and age, we have men that are not men, and they can't be men, and they won't stand up, and they won't say things, even if it comes across as being crass or rough. And I know the Bible. Peter, was it Peter that said, "Speaking the truth in love," or was it maybe Timothy? I don't know. I keep forgetting where that is. But speaking the truth in love. And if you love somebody, you're going to tell them. You just have a certain way that you're supposed to tell them, or tell people. It may not just be an individual. It may be something that's being be said in a generalization or a general way. But it needs to be said, and it's not being said. It's not being dealt with. People are not being dealt with where they need to be dealt with. Sin's not being dealt with. They don't love God. They hate God. That's why I've said that over and over and over again. We're going to see this right here in this chapter. It's just plain as day. If you can't see modern-day Pharisees in your local independent fundamental Baptist churches as well as everywhere else, you got a major problem. By the way, for the record, I'm glad I'm not a Protestant. I'm glad I'm not a Protestant. I'm glad I'm not a Reformer. That I don't have anything to do with that movement. It is a movement. They are not necessarily Christians. It's just like Catholicism. It's just a religion based upon a certain precepts, principles, or whatever you want to call it, or edicts, or catechisms. There's no catechisms in the Bible. Why do you have to have all these added junk to the Bible? They can't get it right. They're never going to get it right. They're going to do their sprinkling and all their other stuff and all their education and their schools, just like the Catholics and the Greeks and the pagans do. Then they're going to build that up like it's some big thing. And they're going to go after, just like Jesus told them, the Jews seek after a sign and the Greeks seek after wisdom. But that's not God's wisdom. If it's God's wisdom, it's right here. Why do you have to go outside of that? Pharisees, Sadducees, Pharisaical movement of today. That's what it is. They can't just stand alone on this Bible. They have to have more because it makes them look more educated. But they're not. They're indoctrinated. If you want an education, all you really need is this. And I know it sounds like a fool statement, but it's not. There have been too many people, many of the discoveries that we benefit from today have come from people who have gotten stuff out of this Bible and they were Christians. See what I'm saying? And you learn what you learn out of this Bible and you start writing it down in books. I don't have a problem with reading books and other books. But I do have a problem of going off to a said institution to be taught by said instructors their said way. Because inevitably, that's what's going to happen. God never gave He never gave the institution of the family instruction and things like that off to somebody else. He didn't do that. Now, as the head of the household, I have the duty or the right, the privilege, if you may, to go and hire somebody else, or to bring somebody else, or to put my children under the instruction of someone else. But I am directly responsible for that. Okay? And I have to answer to God for that decision. But ultimately, it's on me. And I'm the one who's responsible to see that my children are educated appropriately. And as a Christian, as a child of God, I have a duty to make sure my children are educated according to God's ways, and you find that in God's scriptures.